Hello everybody, this is week 2 of the 2014 U.S. Chess League, and it's a matchup between the Dallas Destiny and the Arizona Scorpions. Last week the Destiny down to Miami Sharks, 3.5 to 1/2, and Arizona had beaten Seattle pretty soundly, 3 to 1. So now these two teams are matched up, and how will they pair? Well, Arizona fielded their top team with Mackenzie Molnar on board 1. But let's see how things went. We're going to start with, I think this was board 2. Yes. Mark Ginsburg is playing black for Arizona, and we have Jeffrey Xiong, a wonderful young phenom, really nice kid, is playing white. Jeffrey started out with e4, c5, got a Sicilian, knight to a3. Okay, well, this is a sign that a c3 Sicilian is coming up, most likely. Mark played g6, c3, bishop g7. So we're going through the opening pretty quickly here. Pretty standard development stuff. Now Mark plays a novelty here and plays d5. I really don't see anything wrong with it. Jeffrey advanced, knight e4. Interesting idea. Jeffrey didn't bother to take. He played bishop e3, now f6. Now he does take on f6 and takes with the pawn, knight to b5. And we have a somewhat chaotic position here. Bishop e6, bishop f4, g5. Rook c8 looked like it was leading to a level game. Bishop h2, and now rook c8. So it is a level game here. And at move 15, the two agreed to a draw. Now, they took a while on the time to get to this, but as far as moves, it was only 15 moves. So Arizona ends up with a draw in the first game. Well, one nice thing about this is we can't be doing any worse than Miami did the week before. For our second game, we're going to look at the game between Pedram Atufi, playing on board 3 for Arizona, and he's playing Francisco Guadalupe for Dallas. Francisco has a 2589 performance rating from his experience in the Chess League. So this is going to be an interesting matchup if Pedram can hold this. Because Pedram's performance rating in the U.S. Chess League is 2082. And as far as MVP points goes, he's in minus 15 on MVP points. Alright, so we join this game. It is an open Roy Lopez, and we could spend days covering all the intricacies of this opening. It's a fun opening to play. I played it with both colors. I played it with white and black. Very fun opening. In this position, though, Francisco plays knight takes d2. I don't think I've ever seen that. Usually I've seen bishop takes e3, but I believe knight d2 is playable. Rook takes d4. And now he plays bishop takes e6, but it took him 22 minutes to do this. I don't understand why. Now rook takes, knight g5. Okay, rook takes e5, queen h5. And now Francisco makes a very bad mistake, plays queen f6. It was probably better to play queen e8. And look at that, that bishop on e3 is not looking too happy. But white can counter with queen takes pawn check, king f8, check. And now we can get the trade of queens. But I still think that black is much better in this. Okay, maybe a little better. A little better. But this is the line he should have played. In the game, he played queen to f6, and now queen takes h7, and now king f8. And here there was a lot to consider, and Pedram took a long time with this move, understandably. My choice would have been queen to h4. Alan Katz was looking at playing queen h8 and taking the rook on a8, feeling that he could survive the brutal attack he would come under. I don't believe that's the case. I'm pressed for time, so I'm not going to go through all those variations with taking the rook, going queen h8, queen a8. Feel free to look at it at your own leisure. Use this position, set it up, and take a look. It's worth a study. But Pedram unleashed bishop takes d4 here, and that turned out to be the losing move. Let's take a step back. I do want to show the idea behind queen h4. Black now has a choice. He can move the queen because the fork is threatened, or he can go for a material imbalance. See what happens if he moves the queen. Let's just say queen g6. Bishop attacks the rook, rook drops back, now rook to d3, and we have a rover with the rook coming over to the f file or the g file with added pressure. I like white. I don't know that I would say that white is winning, but I'd have to say white has a clear advantage here. I mean, material's equal, but white's got a whole lot of pressure that I would usually give up a pawn for. So the main line from this position after queen h4 goes like this. Take the bishop, and then the fork. Now you can take the rook, and after knight d5 check, it's double check, king d7, and then knight to e3. Now, maybe this is, where Pedram got lost in his evaluation. Because this little series here, I mean, this is looking like death for white. And the only useful check there is really knight to d5. I guess knight e4 check could be played, but that's kind of risky. Well, let's take a quick look at that. Oh yeah, this problem with this is it's only discovered check, and now g5. And then maybe queen h6. Yeah, this is looking real iffy. However, the nice little move knight d5 is double check. Maybe Pedram didn't see this. And after king d7, it blocks the rook from coming in here. And the problem is you can take here, and you really can't take here because rook d1 is coming in on the open king, and there's not much black can do about it. Of course, he can't play rook to d2 because of queen to g4 check. It would accomplish nothing. He'd have to drop the rook back to e6. So I think white is winning in this position. So I think here, probably rook d8 and then tuck the king away or something like that is the best idea for black. And I think that it's pretty much equal. Maybe white's a little bit better. That was on queen h4. Let's go back to the game where Pedram played bishop takes d4. Knight takes, and now Pedram gets materialistic and plays queen h8 check. Just drop back for a moment. Perhaps knight e4 could have been tried. And since the knight is protected by the queen, that's blocking that file again. And it's hitting the queen. So queen e6, now check. And queen takes a8, rook takes e4, now rook f1. I think black is still winning here, but I don't know, maybe this is just a transposition of moves of what's played in the game. Queen h8 check was played in the game, king e7, queen takes a8, and now he takes the knight, rook to d3, knight to e6. Now I thought he should play queen to c6 here. He didn't. He played rook to f1, rook to e2, but I think that white is lost here anyhow. Queen c6 now, bishop d6, g3, queen c5. Yeah, if the traded queens comes, it's over for white. So he takes the pawn. Now rook takes c2. Interesting to me was knight to g5. I don't want to get into too many different lines here, but look at this. The the holes on the king side are just horrendous. Queen c8 trying to come back to protect them. Now queen takes c2, rook to e3 check, rook takes f takes, queen takes b2, queen f5 comes back for defending. But this is an easily winning endgame for black. Rook takes c2 was played. Now rook to b3. And we're going to go through a few of these moves rather quickly. Again, I'm pressed for time, so I can't devote a whole lot of time to these games right now. So he's got his queen back to defend, and it's a straight up rook for 2 minors, but that passed c-pawn is a very valuable piece in the game. Francisco keeps applying the pressure on the king side. h5, rook takes. I don't know why he did that, but okay. Yeah, he has to weaken up his structure even further to stay alive. But unfortunately, the opponent still finds a way in after rook g3, knight to e4, and Pedram resigned. Okay, so Arizona's down 1 game and has 1 draw. Next, we'll look at the game with Amanda Mateer. In our next game, we see a matchup between Karthik Ramachandran playing white for Dallas, and his rating is 2257, but his performance rating is 2513, and he's only got 2.5. I think this is his first game. So his performance rating after this is 2513. And he is up against Amanda Mateer, who is rated 2113, but her performance rating is at 2232. And she's scoring about 56% in the league and has 10.5 MVP points. She can hold her own. Amanda is married to Mackenzie Molnar, who is playing board 1, and that game we'll see after this one. First, we'll go through her game, and then we'll go through his. All right, I'm not going to spend too much time on the openings, but this is a Benoni. They're never kind to one side or the other. Yeah, so this h3 version, and we'll see why that is played in a moment here. Queen c7, okay. Bishop f4, and the idea here is after knight h5, the bishop can go back to h2, hence the move h3. Now, knight e5 is played, but I have a recommendation here, and I don't think it's been tried. I like bishop to h6. The idea is we want to plop that bishop down on f4, ease the burden on the d6 pawn and the e5 square in particular. Now, white can stop this with knight e2, and then we just bring the bishop back, and we're hitting the pawn on b2, so he can play the knight to c3, we just go bishop h6. Queen c2 and now knight e5, and I think that white's got a little less than a normal opening edge out of this. I think black is doing just fine. It's a good way for black to fight, I believe. So here knight e5 was played, and this has been seen many, many times before. I think this is why it's important with an opening like the Benoni that you get with the computer and you start working with it early in the opening. And if you are well seasoned with the resulting positions that come out of the Benoni later on, then you're going to understand where deviations in earlier moves can have a great impact on where the game's going to head. Alright, so Amanda took on f3 here with check, and bishop takes knight f6. e5, the most dangerous line, of course, and pawn takes, and now d6, and that pawn becomes very pesky. Queen to b6, bishop takes e5, and now bishop e6 has been seen here before. Amanda plays this move in the game. I don't think it is the best. Rook takes e5 has also been played as well. Neither of those have a good track record. I would recommend bishop to d7. Stop that pawn where it is. However, I have to say that this is still clearly favorable for white, but black is in the game. I think if you want to go for an improvement, you have to go for the one at move 14 with bishop h6. Okay, so we're going to go through this real quick, the middle game. And now this is the first true novelty of the game that I'm aware of, bishop takes f6. It doesn't matter White's already winning. D7, rook F8. I mean, she plays as best as she can here, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think that White has got a one game here. It's a matter of having a technique to push this Delroy, the D-pawn, up and hold on to it at least in the first place, and then use it as a staging post for other actions. And that's exactly what Karthik does here. Queen to E6. And now, if Queen to B8, she did not play this, and Rook takes E6. I was actually thinking of Rook takes E6 in this position, but Queen to D6, and now Rook A to D8. Now Rook takes E6. And the whole point of this is that the light squares are very weak around the king. Now Knight to E4. It was really sad to watch this game because you knew Black was going to go down. I'm sure Amanda realized it too. It was just a matter of putting up as much of a fight as she could. She could have tried bishop takes b2 here, but it doesn't work because queen to here check, and you got a block, and then the rook falls. If you don't block, so you move your king away, well, it doesn't really save the rook because after knight g5, threatening mate, bishop comes back to block, and now you play knight to f7 check. That's why Amanda played queen to b8 here. Knight to d6. Knight c5 was what I thought was going to be played. And then after queen e5, queen c4, queen takes b2, knight e6 check. It's a small family fort. And king h8, and this is just winning for white. But he played knight to d6. He has a different idea how to get around. King h6. You know, it's pretty rough when you have to play a move like that. Rook to d1 was playable, but Karthik played rook to e1. Knight f7 check, king comes back, and getting the exchange. Alright, so the exchange was given up for the attack, and it was received back. So now, material is surprisingly equal. However, this is a great example of opposite colored bishops favors the attacker. Rook to d1 was played now to secure that Delroy. That is the biggest factor in the game, even ahead of material. Queen takes a5. Bishop takes b7. Queen to b5. Bishop takes a6. Queen takes b2. And, okay, white's up a pawn. Bishop c4, but that's not the biggest problem in the position. See how this bishop got around behind the queen, created a threatening battery here? Very well played by Karthik. Rook f8 was played. Probably not the best defense. Queen e5 is probably the best. But I think white still has no problem with that. He promotes to a queen. This is a nice little deflection idea. If rook takes d8, then you got queen f7 check. King h6. Rook takes. Bishop takes. Queen f8 check. Picks up piece. So Amanda saw that and she tried this, but still rook takes d8 comes in. And now Amanda tries queen takes f2. Best shot, I guess. King h1. Rook takes. Queen e7. King h6. Queen takes d8. Okay. Amanda doesn't have much hope to stay alive here, and so we're going to blaze through this real quick. She's down a piece for a pawn. So she's going to try and wrangle up that bishop, but Karthik was aware of this and formed this position so that now he can play bishop to f1. A few more checks, maybe she can pick up the bishop. Maybe he won't play bishop to g2, but he does. Okay, well, you got to try, all right? And, you know, the queens got traded, and this endgame is hopeless. She kept playing on. We've got to admire her moxie. No stalemate possibilities now. Okay, here it's kind of ridiculous to play on, but they did keep going. And finally, she did resign here in this position. Alright, so Arizona's lost 2 games, got 1 draw, thanks to Mark Ginsburg 15-move wonder. Our next game will be Mackenzie Molnar. Mac has the white pieces here. Now, Mac is rated 2581, but his performance rating is 2478, and that is often due to him having to try and win games because the team standing on the boards below him. So we can't lump all that unworthy praise on Mac for a lower performance than his rating. You know, it's 48%. It's lower than it should be, but you have to take in the extraneous factors, such as the other boards are really botching it up, and he has to go really beyond the envelope in the games that he's playing to try and make things happen. And we see that happen here. You know, he had actually a good position going on. You know, wasn't winning. He was really putting the pressure on his opponent, who is Julio Cedora in this game. Julio is rated 2685, so he's the stronger player according to rating. But I think that Mac in a level head-to-head game can do well against Cedora. So here, let's get to a more critical position than this. This is the opening. Let's find something meaty. Okay, I just want to touch on a couple things here. Mac has put up quite a good position here. He's really applying pressure. The F7 square is really having everything piled on it. G6 isn't too healthy either, you know, and H6, I mean, we're looking at a possible kingside pawn storm here that could happen within a couple moves. Now, in Cedora's favor, he's got the Horowitz bishops, one on B7, one on D6, scraping into the white kingside, so that's giving him some counter chances here. And in this position, he drops the knight back. He actually should realize that he's got a lot of pressure on his kingside and play bishop takes E4 here. He does not. He plays knight to E7. And now Mac, he's looking at the other boards and he's going, I got to make something happen. Though he could have maintained a clear edge with knight takes D6. This was not played in the game, but it should have been. Because after C takes D6, knight to D7, what do you do here? Well, let's protect the knight for one, okay? With the move knight d7, that knight on e7 is hit, so this has to be played. And now g5 can be played. And I actually think that white's got to be winning here. What's the crushing move? The threat is knight f6, winning the exchange. I don't see how he can really stop that. I mean, he can trade, but the threat's renewed. I don't see how to stop knight f6. And I saw this position here. It was as far as I was looking at while the game was being played. And I don't know why Mac didn't go down this road. But he played g5 right away. Okay, maybe he's a stronger player than I am. Of course, I'm not sitting there with the pressure on me. I'm sitting here, well, I was actually watching these games and I was doing something else. Oh yeah, I was watching a replay of the Siegenfeld Cup. And, you know, I was just glancing at these games, and it just looked natural. Knight takes d6. Just looks so natural here. Knight to d7 here. And now after this, white's only got a tiny, tiny, tiny edge. Black has managed to find saving resources to defend the position. All right. Knight f5 might have been a little better here. But now after knight g4, Mac has got a bit of play that he's got to be concerned about. Knight f5 was played. And now I think he should just play rook to d3, play a little rover, get that rook into the game. And I think he's got a pretty good edge. But he plays pawn takes, and now knight takes, and it's just dead level. So the main fears are over for both players. The aspirations of a kingside attack is finished for white, and the worry about a defense is finished for black. So now we're getting into a transposition into the endgame, and we're going to go rather quickly through here. This is a pretty sharp move. This snags a pawn. Bishop c5 was pretty cool. D takes c5, then rook takes d1. You can't go down that road. Black's going to win that easily. But rook ed2 was played in the game. Now rook takes d4. Hey, wait, this doesn't work. Plays rook takes d4. I'm winning material here. But there's a pin. He can't move the rook. So pretty sweet. So he ended up netting a pawn. So black's up a pawn, but it's a long way from winning the game. But hand it to Sedora to keep persistence going here. And a lot of players were thinking this is a draw. I think it can be drawn if you keep the rooks on the board. But guess what happens? The rooks are gone, and now Black has the luxury of playing for 2 results here. And the frustrating part of this is he's given up another pawn. But it's still not a clearly won game. You still have to win it with technique. But I would say with proper technique, Black is very capable of winning this in most practical situations. Alright, so we're going through this just real quick here. Mac's got to worry about not letting the c-pawn advance and the f-pawn get too far up the board. And he does the best he can. Sedora brings this bishop around to hem in the h-pawn. Now, if the h-pawn is gone, it is for sure a win for Black. There's no way White can hold up. There's no counterplay on the king side, no threat of a passed pawn going anywhere. So Julio sacks back a pawn just so he can get his king up. Maybe if he can get the king to g2 and snare that extra pawn, that might be all he needs. Looks like it is. However, here he goes bishop e1. He doesn't want the king to come grabbing the pawns. But then he decides here, this is rather cute. This is really a nice idea. Plays king to e3. He's ready to run that pawn up the board. Now Mac really has to be on his toes and capture the move bishop to c8. And now if he goes here, we can go bishop to e6. Black has very good winning chances here, but he still has to prove it. However, after king takes b6, there's a little bit of miscalculation here by Mac. King to d4, protecting the pawn, getting ready to advance it. So now we have the dual threat of the c-pawn and the f-pawn coming up the board. This is just winning for Black. Bishop c8, f4, a5. And I'm going to pause the video here. Well, I'm not going to pause the video. You're going to pause the video here and see if you can find the correct continuation for Black. There's actually 2 of them. But one is just answers the question right away. Okay, c4 is also a winning idea, but I really like what Sedora played here. He really adds drama to the game with bishop takes a5 check. I love sacking a piece in the endgame to get your point across. And after Mac took the bishop c4, and it's all over. There's no way White can save the day, even though he can guard the c2 square. You can't guard them all. And after f3, Molnar resigned. Just going back a move, in case you were wondering, bishop e3 doesn't work because there's only one square that the pawn has to cross on the c file that's a light square. So after bishop e4, f3, the decoy takes, and we can promote this pawn. So yeah, I thought that Sedora's move here was a really nice one with bishop takes a5. It's a kind of a bolt out of the blue. Mac was already losing at this point. c4, like I said, would have won as well, but this one is just a very instructive way to win the game. Alright folks, Arizona goes down 3.5 to 1/2, just like Miami Sharks did. Looks like the Dallas Destiny are the team to watch. There are interdivisional matchups for this next week's game, and Arizona will take on the Boston Blitz. Should be fun. That will be on Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the ICC. Alright, this was not a joyful video to bring to you, but it happens in the league. Arizona will bounce back, believe me. And Dallas, they just got a strong team this year. They're going to be hard to beat. It's going to be interesting to see how play unfolds. Alright, until next week, good luck.